All right, all right. Here we are. Good to see everybody again at part 2 of our medieval adventure. Again, we're looking here at the medieval times dinner theater. This is a very amazing. Check out those horses coming out. If you ever get to go to this dinner theater, it's quite real. They actually sword fight. They actually joust. They have all types of competitions. You can go and you root for different folks. It's amazing. You'll enjoy it. All right, part 2, of our medieval adventure. Let's look at how the towns were set up or how people actually lived. This gives you a good idea of what things were like. All right. And what we're going to call this is the manorial system or the manor. Where they lived is what's called a manor. Like you and I live in a city, live in a town. It's kind of set up in a certain way where the city has a certain amount of money and they make little parks for you. They set up the schools. They set up places for food to come in and out. They make it to where people can actually function and live in some type of planned society. So their planned society or their economic system, where people can get food, clothing, and shelter. So remember this, whenever you have economics, you're always just think about the basics. Food, clothing, and shelter. How do people get it? Think about how you get food, clothing, and shelter. There's a system set up for you to get this, okay? Their system is called the manorial system. This is the medieval economic system that functioned inside of feudal society, the manor. Let's look at it. Okay, so it's built around these large estates, all right, called manors. So you have these large manors, all right. I like to think of them as like big giant plantations. Some of you may be familiar with that, all right, and included a village and the land that surrounded it. So if we look right in here, we look at this map, and you see a medieval manor. Whoa, let's go back up here. You see all types of things. And typically on the outside is where the farming would take place. And then on the inside is where people would live. You have a church. Like here you see a blacksmith to help with the making metal objects in order to make things a little bit better. You have a bakehouse where bread was made. There's your barn. This is giving you everything. The village is where people would live, and on the outside would be the food where it's being grown. All right. And in the manor system, if you look a little bit closer here, you'll see you've got this pond. You've got the church right here, the serfs' cottages. We'll talk more about the serfs and how they were taken advantage of. They may have liked it, though, because they knew what they would do when they get up every morning. Look right over here. Look, it's an oven. Yes, this is where the bread would be baked. A well that everybody would use. But in feudal society, you have the manor system that's set up where everybody basically knew what they had to do. There was not a lot of freedom in it. A lot of times you're born right here on the manor. You may stay in that one spot. You may not go more than 5, 6, 7 miles your whole life. May be all that you get to see. So here, check this out. Manors were self-sufficient. They didn't need much from the outside. Most things needed for daily life were produced on the manor. All right, check out this beautiful diagram right here. Look at these thatched roof houses. This is where the serfs would live. And if you notice, you get really close, you see these fences. These fences around these houses, this is the pay that the serfs would get. This would be their pay. They get to farm that land, and how they took care of that little tiny piece of land, that's how their families would eat or not eat if they didn't do very good. And again, the fields are on the outside. Look how well the lords live, these nobles, these nice big old houses. Yes, you usually have a creek coming through and a water wheel. All right, there's a water wheel near here that I ride by my motorcycle sometime. It's real pretty. I think it's actually still functioning. All right, anyways, let's keep going. So more about the manor system. Here's your serfs. All right, let's look at the serfs. I want you to ask yourself this question. Would you like to be a serf? Would you like to be a serf? Might be easy. You know what to do every morning when you wake up. Might be hard because it's tough work. Let's look. Peasants who lived and worked on the Lord's manor. So that's what they did. They woke up every morning and they worked for the Lord. They were not allowed to leave the manor. All right. They were basically, I like to think of them as like trees. That tree is planted on that piece of land, and it produces stuff on that land, but it never leaves unless somebody cuts it down. And that's the only way it could leave. If it's a tree, well, these people, they couldn't leave. They weren't allowed to leave. All right. They were basically a property of the Lord. All right. Like they really couldn't even marry without the Lord's permission. There's some strange things in that if you'd like to research that. The next topic. They were allowed to farm on the manor in return for work. So they would farm and they would produce a little bit of food for them and as much food as they can for everyone above them on the feudal pyramid. All right. But here's the deal. Remember, the lords were obligated, and they had a job also, that is to protect the serfs. All right, here's a little bit more about the manor system. So, life for a serf, you can probably imagine this. It was not easy. I mean, it was hard. It was really tough. They did not live very long. They didn't have really good health. They worked long hours. Here's something y'all think about, though. When they first started, they all had good teeth. I wonder how they all had good teeth. I don't understand that. You got to go research that. That's a pretty amazing thing. All right, so here's something that's really kind of will freak you out too. Now, if you're a child and you were born to a mom and dad serf, you were a serf too. You were born on that land. You couldn't leave. You became the property of that manor. That's where you belong. That's where you'd stay most of your life. All right, the harshness of manor life. Let's look at it. Peasants now, they pay taxes in order to do the extra things that the manor had for them, which is like using the mill where they could take the little bit of grain that they had and they could grind it up and actually turn it into bread or something they could eat. All right, they had to pay a tithe. And you all probably know what a tithe is. That's where you give a little bit of money to the church. Well, the church was run by one person, the priest, in that certain manner. All right. Now it's typically about 10%, and then it was also. The serfs lived in crowded cottages, and their floors were dirt. They just had dirt floors, real crowded together. A lot of times they would actually live with their animals inside of the cottage with them. A lot of times pigs or dogs or whatever, they'd stay inside them for the warmth. They would work long hours, sun up to sundown. They had a job. They were there to do it. They weren't there to go to school. They weren't there to learn to read and write. They weren't there to contribute except by providing labor, and most of that labor was farming. They did not have good diets, and that's something to think about. Some of the things they started developing during the Middle Ages, and we can talk about this later because of little mini ice age and everything happened. They'll have poor diets. Illness is rampant. They're very malnourished. Their life expectancy ended up being in the late 30s and the early 30s and the late 20s. They did not live very long. I would be considered an ancient man. They'd all call me Papa or something like that. Who knows? All right, serfs generally accept their lives because they believe this is part of God's plan. And we call this whole society, we call this Christendom. And they all basically believed in the church, which is the Catholic Church, telling them what is important in their lives. All right, freemen. Who were freemen? Let's check them out. Now, there is a group of people that are a lot like serfs, and basically in every way they're a serf, but they basically can move around from place to place. These would be your blacksmiths, your millers. They had a skill that was a little more advanced and needed, so they were a little more highly qualified, and people wanted them to be able to move around. So these freemen, along with the serfs, they end up having to pay rent to the nobles, but they were basically the same thing, just a little bit higher than a peasant. You have the freeman. All right, let's see how much you remember. Who did everyone own loyalty to? Y'all holler it out. Everyone owned loyalty to. Who was it? All right, next one be. Nobles were near the top of the social hierarchy. They got what from the king? Y'all say it. Let y'all say it. Here we go. Lesser nobles, knights, gave what in return for land? The lesser nobles, the knights, gave what in return for land? Y'all know that. It starts with a P. Number 4, blank were bound to the land. We just learned about them. They worked in return for, what did they work for? What was it? All right. Last one, blank were skilled workers. They paid rent to the blank and were free to move if they wanted to. All right, here's your answers. Good job, everybody. Hope you're having fun with medieval times. And I hope you get a chance to go to that dinner theater. It could be amazing. And let's spend just our last couple seconds looking at Medieval Times Dinner Theater. You guys have a wonderful day. I'm out of here.